In modified superfluid vacuum theory, the universe is filled with an invisible, frictionless quantum fluid, but it isn't an infinitely smooth liquid. If we zoom all the way down to the absolute limit of physical reality, the Planck scale, we find a hyperdense, granular lattice of ultra-fine components. Space has a physical grain. When we look at empty space, our eyes tell us there is nothing there. Mainstream physics treats the vacuum as a void, an abstract mathematical backdrop where things happen. But what if space isn't empty at all? What if it is a physical, material substance? To understand how this quantum fluid creates physical reality, we trace a 5-tier scaling hierarchy from the subplanck realm to observable matter. At tier 0, we have etherons, the ultimate continuous fluid particles of the vacuum. At tier 1, coherent etheron circulation forms torans, fundamental, Planck-sized vortex rings. At tier 2, these torans assemble along 20 triangular faces and 12 vertices into icosahedral cages called microcells. This regular, quasicrystalline packing forms the quiet, resting spatial grid. Why icosahedral geometry? Because parallel vortex stacking causes severe fluid friction and turbulence. The icosahedron's 5-fold golden ratio symmetry allows adjacent torans to feed return flows into one another seamlessly, creating a stable, self-contained ground state. At tier 3, when phase excitations pass through adjacent microcells, their phase funnels interlock along continuous channels. This forms vortex filaments, physical, three-dimensional strings woven out of phase-locked microcells. Unlike standard string theory, which relies on abstract zero-thickness lines vibrating in unobserved extra dimensions, Msvt filaments are three-dimensional fluid tubes embedded in physical space. Their vibrational modes, specifically circularly polarized Kelvin waves, give rise to the quantized properties of energy. At tier 4, we reach matter itself, the soliton. In Msvt, elementary particles are not solid objects placed into space. They are localized, self-sustaining topological knots trapped within the spatial grid. Mass is simply the localized rotational momentum density of the vortex knot, creating a surrounding pressure gradient in the grid. Charge corresponds to the chirality and direction of fluid flux exiting the cell. When positive and negative torin flows nest in equal, counter-rotating balance, external flux cancels completely, giving rise to neutral particles like the neutron while preserving dense internal mass. Matter and space are made of the same fluid medium. Forces are simply hydrodynamics in action. Electrostatic attraction occurs when adjacent nodes spin in phase alignment, creating a low-pressure Bernoulli suction channel between them. Repulsion occurs when opposing spins clash, creating shear turbulence and high dynamic stagnation pressure. At nuclear distances, the strong force manifests when adjacent icosahedral nodes physically lock face-to-face. Their internal fluid channels merge into a single shared vortex tube, cleanly explaining both asymptotic freedom at close range and color confinement when pulled apart. Finally, radiation and electromagnetism are the transverse shear waves of the lattice. A photon is a localized wave packet propagating across the packed microcell matrix, inducing a sequential chiral precession in each icosahedral frame as it passes. Light does not travel through a void. It is the traveling disturbance of the vacuum itself.